Good morning. Today we're going to be looking at comparing two McCaig poems. And this is prep for the Nat 5 and higher exam questions. Okay, so with that in mind, you're going to need to have for this exercise your two poems that you have been studying. Now, I appreciate that you may not have paper copies of them just at the moment, but what I've done is I have put my annotated versions into class materials. You'll see it says 2018 annotated poems. So visiting hour and hotel room, these are the two poems that we are going to look at. You probably have your own annotated version, which is great. If you don't, you can use mine. So we are going to be looking at, in preparation for how you compare themes and ideas and techniques across a number of poems, starting with two. Because you've only studied two, we'll move on to more than that when you've studied more than that. Because when you get to Nat 5, you will probably get a question like this. So this is a question at the end of the McCaig Scottish text segment based on Brooklyn Cop. And the question was, by referring to this poem and to at least one other by McCaig, show how he explores human experience, worth 8 marks. I'll show you how the 8 marks is broken up. Now, human experience could be replaced with theme of loss or theme of isolation, death, communication, how he explores setting, how he explores vivid characters. It could be any number of things that are common to a number, at least two, of McCaig's poems. He could also replace that with uses imagery to explore human experience, so on and so forth. So the idea behind the being able to do the Scottish set text is that you know all of the poems really well, and you also understand the different techniques of use of theme, setting, character, and how McCaig has done that. What you're expected to be able to do in the 8-mark question for Nat 5 is you need to have what at least two McCaig poems have in common, so related to and answering the question and these things. So if there are two poems that deal with a theme of loss, you could answer human experience because loss is a human experience. You would get, that's where you get 2 marks for here. So you'd need to make 2 points about that. You'd need shown poem. You don't need to worry about this just yet. Okay, I'm just telling you where we're heading with this class eventually. So then you'd have a quote from the shown poem. So that's the one that's in the actual exam paper. And that quote would need to demonstrate what you've pointed out in commonality, which is answering that question. And then you'd need to make a comment on that commonality, which is answering that question. Then you'd have to find this, do the same activity from another poem. It could be any of the other 5. It just can't be the one from the exam booklet. So you can have 2 from the same other poem, or you can have 2 from different poems. But the same idea is that you'd have a quote that relates to that commonality and the comment that relates to that commonality, both answering that question. Now at Nat 5, it's really quite straightforward, and you can get your 20 marks at Nat 5 in Scottish set text if you know your poems and your themes and your quotations well enough. When it gets to higher, it gets a wee bit more difficult. Okay? You need to first of all get 10 marks, and this question becomes more difficult because there's often 2 things. So by referring to this poem and at least one other by McCaig, show how he explores, for example, human experience through theme. So you would have to answer these questions through theme and human experience all the way through. But the thing is, it gets more difficult. You need to do a quote and a comment for each mark here. So you'd need to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 quotes and comments here. And you need to have a detailed commonality here to gain those 2 marks. Just to give you an idea of what that would look like, that's what I mocked up earlier. So it's a lot of writing for higher, but you don't need to worry about that because you're just in S3 at the moment, and you're moving toward Nat 5, so you're going to be just grand. Okay, so the activity that we're going to be looking at today We're looking at the two poems, Hotel Room and Visiting Hour. And we are comparing these two poems to prep for Nat 5 and higher exam questions. So, first thing that we're going to do. What I want you to start thinking about is, what does Visiting Hour have in common with Hotel Room? A lot of students struggle with the idea of what a commonality is because no one ever actually uses that word in language and speech in everyday life. So what does commonality mean? What do they have in common with each other? So an idea of a word bank to express commonality. What is similar? What stands out to you that's the same? What do they do or say that is the same? So I'm looking for you to think of a minimum of 3 things that Visiting Hour and Hotel Room 12th floor do that are the same, okay? We can eliminate the written by the same poet, right? That's assumed. So what I want you to do is you need to pause this film at this point. Maybe what you could do is you could write Hotel Room on one side of a piece of paper, and you could have Visiting Hour on the other side of the piece of paper. And then you can think about generally what they're doing the same. Okay? So think of 3 bullet points. Generally what they're doing the same. And that can be maybe in a technique. It can be in a theme. Maybe it can be in a character or in a setting. Or maybe it can be a general idea. So see what you can come up with that. And then once you've come up with a minimum of 3 things, I will go through my list. Okay, so now's your chance to pause it. Get your poems out. Have your piece of paper and give that a go. Okay, so you've had a chance to do that. You've got your minimum of 3 things there. So let's have a look at what I came up with. Both Hotel Room and Visiting Hour create a distinct setting. Distinct setting for Hotel Room is New York City. Distinct setting for Visiting Hour is a hospital. Okay? They also both use the 5 senses. Now, Visiting Hour really does that with the smells, the sights, the sound of the bell, things like that. So we've got the 5 senses to create that setting and the emotion that goes with it. We also have it to a certain extent here. So he's got the sight, he's got the sounds of the radio and the television set, the war hoops. He's not got the taste and he's not got smell in here, but there's something very visceral and very about blood glazed. So he's definitely using the senses to create a setting there and to place you in that emotion. We also have the theme of death and loss. So in Visiting Hour, the theme of death and loss is quite literally the deaths in the hospital and specifically the death of the female relative. In this one, it is a loss of civilization and it is the death and the violence involved on the street level at nighttime. There's also a focus on ordinary people. New York City is filled with famous people. Who does McCaig write about? He writes about the people who live down in the normal streets and live in poverty. He's talking about ordinary people, not the people who can fly in the helicopter. In Visiting Hour, also about ordinary people. An ordinary person dying in a hospital, ordinary people working in a hospital. So he's focusing on people and situations that all readers can relate to. He also uses a vivid imagery to show theme or people or place. So if you take Hotel Room, in my annotations, anything that's yellow is imagery. So there's vivid imagery here of the Empire State Building, the helicopter, the extended metaphor of the Wild West. Also, in Visiting Hour, there is a great deal of imagery. There's the synecdoche of combs my nostrils and the metaphor of combs my nostrils as they go bobbing along. There is the white cave of forgetfulness, a withered hand trembles on its heart, the glass fang. So there's a great deal of imagery there that's quite vivid and memorable to express a theme. Both poems also show the poet's sense of weakness and frailty. The hotel room, he's not down on the street. He is lying in bed between a radio and a television set. So he's hiding in his room, essentially, because he's scared. And in here, he has literally saying he's not going to feel, he's not going to feel. He's denying these emotions that he knows he's going to have to feel. He also refers to himself as clumsily rises and dizzily going out. So he's not saying, I can take this, I will think of you, I will remember you. He's talking about how much it is affecting him. So he's talking about those normal human emotions that we don't often discuss. Okay, so what I want you to do with your minimum of 3, I'm sure that you've got some of them in here. If you prefer yours, use your 3 topics, or take 3 of mine. And then what I want you to do is you could write, creates a distinct setting. All right? So then you'd write your quote from hotel room. So which distinct setting do we want to have a look at? I would say New York. So the Empire State Building, that jumbo-sized dentist drill. Okay, and for Visiting Hour, I would put, you could put the green and yellow corridors. So there you have an idea, distinct setting. You have the idea of it, both poems create a distinct setting. You've got a quote that shows the distinct setting. And then I want you to do an explanation. This is effective because, and now I'm looking for you to add a little bit more detail. It shows New York City as a place of modernity and progress while still causing pain. Okay? This is similar to the depiction of the hospital as a place of illness and infection. I just like having 2 words there. You could just even have 1, but sickness, illness, because the green represents mucus and the yellow could be pus. Okay? So the Empire State Building represents modernity, but the dentist drill represents pain. Okay? So your task will be to choose one of the above elements of commonality. So that's what we've done here. Creates a distinct setting. Find 2 quotes, 1 from each poem. So we've got a quote, and we've got a quote. And then explain how McCaig develops this similarity and what it made you visualize and was it effective. So I've combined those three things here. So you've got task 1, choose a commonality. Task 2, choose your quotes. And part 3, explain it. And then I want you to do that 3 times, just to practice it. Now, please don't worry about getting things wrong. Give it a go. If you are totally off base, I will check it in the quiz, because I'll set this up as a quiz that you can enter your information in, and then I can give you individualized feedback on each of your answers. Do not say, I do not know what to do. Give it a go, make an effort, just try. If you say, I do not know what to do, then Miss Henderson and I will have a chat about how to support you further. But this stage, you're going to have to start making the effort to take chances and make mistakes. Okay? So this is your task for the remainder of today. And if you don't get it finished today, then either I can speak with Miss Henderson about you continuing it tomorrow or next week. Okay, guys. I'm online if you need help. Okay, thanks. Bye.